You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as a Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. Join Alexandre and Debbie Gabriel as they share their whirlwind romance story of how a chance meeting at a concert sparked a journey that became Maison Ferrand. From crafting world-class spirits to keeping family traditions alive, they spill the secrets behind their innovative and flavorful legacy. Expect laughs, stories, and a behind-the-scenes peek into the magic of the Gabriel family. This is one unforgettable episode, folks. Sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite Maison Ferrand cocktail, and enjoy the show. Debbie and Alexandre, welcome to Served Up. I am truly honored and really excited to have you both on the show.
It's great to be here, Bridget. It's really nice to see you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you both. It's so fun to have you, captured both at the same time. It's just the best. Let's start with your origin story. And I'm going to start with Debbie first. How did the two of you meet? And how did this relationship really evolve? And, give us a lot of the background.
Well, we go back to 1988. When we met in New York City, where a friend of mine was in a very great blues player, and he was opening at the Lone Star Cafe for James Brown. And I would call my friends and put your name on the list so we could get him for free. And Alexandre happened to come with a mutual friend of ours. And so the first time I met him was at this James Brown concert. From there, we kind of met and went to see him twice, and then we went to a party, and it was really kind of by mistake because we were at a party and Alexandre was talking to my friend and I didn't want to go through the party by myself, and I said to him, "Would you mind walking me to the door?" We get to the door, and I go out, and he keeps coming, and I'm kind of like, okay, and he keeps coming. I said, do you live this way? And he just keeps coming and following me, and I didn't know what to do. And so there was a bar at the corner, and I said, do you want to get a drink or something? And so that was kind of the beginning of what's now like the rest of our life. That's really what happened.
So you just kind of followed
Bridget,
her.
you know what Debbie doesn't tell you, because I sound like a pervert right now.
A little bit. I'm like, you sound like a little bit of a stalker.
What she doesn't tell you is that actually, my English was not so good back then, and it's improved a little bit, but not that much. And maybe it was wishful thinking, but when I was at the other end of the party, and she mentioned, "Do you want to walk?" She said, "Do you want to walk me to the door?" I understood, "Do you want to come home with me?" Maybe, and that's what I understood. And then so when she comes at the door, we arrive. She says goodbye to me. I'm like, well, she's a bit crazy, but she's cute, so she says goodbye. And then she said, and I followed her because to me that was very clear, and that's why that was not, we're together thanks to James Brown, that's for sure. And then also thanks to poor English, after that. So that's how we, and that was the first encounter. And then, and we walked and we had a drink at that bar. And a funny quick story, Bridget. Many years later, we're in New York City. Debbie's driving a van, and we got 3 kids, and 3 kids of our friends are with us, and we're in Manhattan. And Debbie's like, do you guys want to see where Dan and I first kissed? I don't know why I'm telling you this, but and then Debbie drives, and then she goes through like a one-way street the other way, and we get stopped by the police. New York, they stop, and there's a light, and the guy's like, "What's happening?" And the guy comes to me, and he says, and I said, "Well, I got to tell you, we just wanted to show the kids where we first kissed, and look now in the back." And the guy looks, and he sees 6 kids bouncing off of the seats of the van in the back, and he goes to Debbie and says, "Where's the bar you first kissed?" Like I can overhear him say this, and she shows the bars across, and he looks at his friends. This guy says, "Okay, you can let him go." And that was a few years back after the encounter. So, but since then, a lot has happened. It's quite a few years back, but that's how we met.
That is a really cool story and a great way to get out of a ticket.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, Debbie, I just want to stay in this era just for a little bit. Was an adjustment for you? What was that like going over to France, with the culture and the language? Did you already speak French? What did that journey look like for you? Really committing to a relationship with someone who's French. And I know that you reside now in Brooklyn and as well as in Paris. What was it like for you early on?
Well, when I moved to Paris, we had been together for many years, so we didn't just jump into it. And I also went to Paris still working a full-time job, and I stayed with I work in fashion, and I stayed with my company. And, we were both very hardworking. Alexander was traveling quite a bit because of, building the business. I arrived and it was around Christmas time, and I started to bake a lot of cookies. I remember this. I met my neighbor, I started to bake a lot of cookies because in America, when you welcome people with cookies. So I started making all these cookies and giving them to all my neighbors. And it really broke the ice, and people were very welcoming to me. And I just did it naturally. And I guess it was something that they don't do there. So they were so surprised. And by the time Alexander got back, he was Debbie's husband. So I thought it was very funny.
I love it.
But, Paris is like everywhere. It's kind of a big, small town. And I think that I did not really speak French. I had been working full time and traveling and going to the Alliance Francaise in New York. And, you can only do so much. And then I started taking classes when I went to France. But I have to say, people were so welcoming and so nice to me. I was really lucky. And we were having a baby. So you meet people through groups with your children. And I just found people to be extremely welcoming. And then I had some friends from France that I knew from New York. And they were very, very happy to kind of open the door to me and lay out the welcome mat. So I have to say I had a pretty positive experience. Yes, it was a huge adjustment, language, smell, sound, all of that. But I don't know. I feel really lucky.
Yeah.
That I have the best of both worlds, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with that said, I want to flip it back over to Alexander. And, tell us a bit about what gave you the confidence to take the leap into cognac and to take the leap into the beverage spirit world, and what brought you to Maison Ferrand.
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but in a nutshell, I grew up on a farm in South Burgundy, and it was a small farm. We had a vineyard. We also had, goats for goat cheese, and also, cattle. And so that's the way I grew up. I grew up with my grandparents, and we're like 6 kids, and it was the farm life. And to me, I guess it's something that always comes back, by the way. But that's the way I grew up. And then the person I really spent a lot of time with was my grandmother. And she always thought, she's like, you have to leave this country and come back later. But when you're 18 years old, we want you out of here. and when you're young, you're like, man, this is a big world. And I remember seeing in the newspaper, I'm 17 years old. I'm in the kitchen of the farm, and I see this ad, or this was not even an ad, it was like a little thing that said you could go and work in New York, in the US for 3 months for vacation and legally, go there and have so I worked, in different companies, to get enough money for a ticket. And I went I went to the US. I was barely 18 years old. I just passed 18 years old, spent 3 works, I was a barback, South Street Seaport, staying in a YMCA for $25 with no AC. And I thought I was the king of the hill. And that was my first encounter with America. And I thought that was cool because, I was young. It was all new. I didn't really speak English at all. So that's how I started. And then I came back to France, and my first encounter with distilling, my grandfather was what we call in French bouilleur de cru. Bouilleur de cru is somebody who has the right to distill his own crop. So it's like an estate distilling. And that was, quite a few farmers had that privilege. It was a privilege like that you had from father to son at the time. And then, so I'm 10 years old. My grandfather tells my grandmother, I'm going to show the kid how distillation, how to distill. And she's arguing he's too young, And I remember my first encounter with alcohol. I'm not even sure I'm supposed to say, but I'm somebody who always tries things. And I actually crushed a full finger in a door, in a huge barn door. So I have a thumb that's very flat and longer. And my great aunt gave me Mar de Bourgogne. Bridget, you know Mar de Bourgogne, right? It's like grappa made in Burgundy, foolproof, because that was the medication of the moment. And that's my first encounter. I'm 9 years old. Now I'm 10 years old. A year later, my thumb has been kind of fixed, and I'm there. And my grandfather wants to show me, and he says, Alexander, and that's what's defining for me. First, you taste Mar de Bourgogne with your ears. I remember I'm 10 years old. When you're 10 years old, you take things super literally. And I remember this down my throat a year earlier, and I was hot and I was burning. And I'm like, and this is a man who's been through Second World War, a man of a few words, a few words. And I thought, man, he's going to put the Mount of Bourgogne in my ears, I'm like, this is crazy. And he's like, shh. And I'm like, I can't hear anything. He said, exactly. You had the must that was just there. Mar de Bourgogne is distilled from must when you crush the grapes. And you say, if it's silence, it means that it's not corrupted by insects and so on. So you use your ear, you taste with your ears. And if your raw material is intact, then very likely you have a good beginning to make a good spirit. And that's how we distilled the first Mar de Bourgogne. And actually, when Debbie and I married, and there was an aged Mar de Bourgogne foolproof, that was a bit of a symbol. There was a huge Demi Jones. Believe me, people drank way too much of that. And that was the first encounter. And to me, there was always that magic about a still. You could take something from nature, something crazy, like a wine must, and distill into something that's capturing the essence of something. And to this day, I think that was defining. And to my grandfather, cognac was the star in the sky. If you were to distill, cognac was the go-to. And when your family, the people who raise you, look up to something, I don't know if it's the same with you, Bridget, but it's something that is in you as a little voice. That's important. Look, Debbie and I love music, and we have a daughter who went to Berkeley School of Music. Maybe that has something to do with it. You know what I mean? I see a lot of guitars behind you. I'm thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that was what it was. And then fast forward, I knew I was very interested in farming, but my cousins who went into farming were always having a very, very hard time. A couple of them went bust, bankrupt. So I was like, how can we make it work? And I always thought, either wine or distilling, because it's attaching value to a farm product. And to me, it made sense. And so that's, and then I went and I wanted to learn English, hence the story I just told you. And I wanted to learn business because I knew I was not very submissive and very easy at school. So I just thought I'm going to start my own little shop. And so I decided to go to study business, but I didn't have any money. So what I did, I started a little company with somebody at school with me to try to help farmers export, because I studied in New York where I met a crazy redhead, Debbie. What she didn't tell you, she was doing tequila shots with the beer chasers. And being from a distilling background, I tasted doing this. I was like, well, man, I got to learn something there. And that's how we met at that James Brown concert. And so to me, then I went and I studied business as a year in New York and then a year in Japan as well, which for me was a total new world. And to finance this, I started a company where I was helping different farmers export what they were doing. And I did okay with this. And I had like 4 kids from the school working with me, and I was paying them a salary and using them as promoters and, and doing it myself too. And one of our customers was the Ferrand family. And they were basically almost closing shops. And they said to me, would you be interested to buy it? And I did. That was 36, 37 years ago. And I was already with Debbie. And I wanted to introduce Debbie to my parents and to my grandparents. And this guy, from the Ferrand family says, I want to talk to you about something very serious. I'm like, well, I can't. I'm introducing Debbie, to my family. And because I really like Debbie. And he's like, bring the girlfriend. So Debbie was with me when we were there. And to tell you how immature we were, there's this big house. This is the house here, at night, where Debbie thought like she was sliding in the corridors running, because the wooden floor was so shiny. So we're kids, were kids, I was 23 years old. And so that's when we did. Next morning, I decided yes. And then the 10 next years went like a blip, just distilling, working, blending, visiting the world, opening markets, meeting great bartenders. And Bridget, you and I know each other many, many years, so you know how it's been.
Time.
And building a community. Debbie and I feel that we're a big family. Debbie and I and the team, we're a big family on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say a team of misfits on a mission because we're all a bit, strange some ways, and I like people who are different, and that's what we are. But that's the early days.
I love that. I love that. It's quite remarkable what you have built. And Debbie, early on when Alexandre was diving, full in on Maison Ferrand, what were your thoughts? Did you think it was a good idea? Were you nervous about it? Were you already a fan of cognac?
I didn't really know cognac until I met Alexandre and we started tasting. And I always like cocktails. So I do love a good cognac classic. And it seems like so much is the basis for cognac. I'm lucky. And I kind of felt we were both really hard workers. And I never really had any doubts about his ability to do something. And, we were both kind of very passionate about what we did. And I think when you're passionate about what you do and when you love, we both loved our jobs. When you love what you do, it's just natural, I think, everything has got ups and downs, but I think that was for me, the hardest part about moving to France was I loved what I did and I loved my job. So I totally understood. And with Alexandre, I was in fashion and I kind of feel like lifestyle business, spirits we have a lot of things in common, and you meet amazing people in the spirits business. We've met so many fantastic people. It's a product that makes everybody happy. So when you tell them what you do, it opens doors.
Yeah, it really does. And I do want to talk to you. I want to stay with you, Debbie, for just a moment, because, we do have something in common. We're both moms, and my husband is a master brewer. I don't know if you know that or not about
Yes.
Jamie. We own a brewery in our hometown. And, Paige, our daughter Paige, spent a lot of her childhood in that brewery, a lot of her childhood with family meals in the back of the brewery. She's home for the summer right now. She's, off doing her thing, but she helps our brewer mash in on some days, if she's needed. Do you have any stories that you can share about your children really kind of growing up in the industry, and how did you manage that?
Well, from the time they were little, they've always been somewhat involved because, as Alexandre said, we're a family business. Mm-hmm. And even when we lived in a small apartment, we always had people sleeping at our house that were coming to visit. And they were always people that were somehow affiliated with work if they weren't family. So they were exposed to so many different kinds of people. I remember one woman that came she had her master's in enology. And I remember I felt very insecure about going to a restaurant and ordering a wine because I don't know that much. And you're with people like you in the industry who have so much knowledge. And I just always remember her telling me that, you have to trust your own palate because what I like may not be what you like. And that kind of thing always stuck with me. And with the kids, I taught them all how to cook because I kind of felt like wherever you go in the world, if you can make three things, you can make a chicken, a chocolate cake, and some good potatoes, you can go you can go anywhere. It's easy. And so they've always been very good cooks. And as we always have people, they were always there to help set the table, to cook and to talk. And when our oldest daughter, Arian, was applying to university, as you know, you have to write kind of a paper about yourself, something that talks. And she wrote a paper she called it Hotel Gabriel, because everyone calls our house Hotel Gabriel. And she wrote a paper about the good guest, the bad guest, and the unexpected guest. And I don't know for you, but people always say to me, wow, how do you have so many people? It must be awful. And I said, we have so many people. It's been so great. And I can probably count on one hand how many people were not. We've been really lucky. People have been lovely, wonderful. We've met great people. We always have an open house policy. And my kids have grown up like that. And it kind of has followed them where they've gone out in the world.
Yeah, your hospitality is superb.
Thanks. Charles is, very interested in the business, and he's already worked dealing with Alex Chesko, working in production, and having to do a lot of the grunt work, just like you're talking about with Paige. He's worked in Copenhagen with a distributor there who did an amazing job of teaching him and just really honing his skills about fine wines and more into the whole distillation process and more about how a product is made and a real understanding of what it is to service a customer, because hospitality is so key. Our daughter worked in hospitality for 2 weeks at a patisserie, and she thought, oh, it's going to just be like one of those cooking shows where you bake pretty cakes. And 2 weeks in patisserie, she said, wow, I'm going to study really hard because it's a tough business. So, and she understands hospitality. We were lucky enough, she worked with Ezra Starr for a little while she was in school. And,
wow.
And she really gets it.
That's incredible.
The hard work. Yeah.
I want to flip it back to Alexander. I do believe that hospitality, by the way, is not something that you can really learn. It's something that it's in you. You're born that way, right? I mean, I can teach anybody how to make a cocktail, but I can't teach them to be kind. I can't do it, right? I can't teach them not to be an asshole to people. I can, but I sure as heck can teach you how to make any kind of a cocktail at this point. Alexander, can you share maybe a moment when you were building Maison Ferrand, where you really, building the company, where you sat back and thought, man, this is really going to be something special?
Well, it's a great question. I see it as a mission, something that I'm creative, as you know, and I love to create things, so the research about this. And like I said, to us, there's two things that matters: the community, the people, our friends, the people we love, the team. So as you know, we got, always with the Zealand people we love, and that includes the company and creating incredible spirits, designing a still, building a new aging warehouse. This is all fits in, and everything farming. Remember, the farming is around the corner for us. We grow grapes to make our cognac. We grow juniper berries to make cedar gin. We are one of the only gin, with that. We make, now we're growing cane in Barbados and in Jamaica. So this is things that's always around the corner. There's not a lot. We're growing coconuts for our rum cut and dry plant array, and as we speak, we are planting 6,000 coconut trees. So this is stuff that we're growing for the future, for the future generations. Also, I think it's important, not just our family. I think my grandfather always said, "You never own the land, you tend the land." Humans, we think we own the land, but the land, if it has a conscience, must love, because that. And so to me, it was always being on a mission. It was not a business project per se. Business is very important. I like to say, heads in the stars, feet on the ground. We're farmers. We are counting the money to make sure we can afford it. We're 100% independent. If we screw up, nobody's going to come and say, "Oh, let me bail you out." We know that. Let me tell you, 20 years ago, we almost went bankrupt. And when we started, there were 6 employees working with us. Now we're much larger. But one of that lady that's still with us, we are 3 out of the 5 that were with us that are still with us. And when it was so tough 20 years ago, Beatrice, she was actually playing the lottery and throwing the lottery tickets in my pockets to say, "I know that if you win, you'll do good use with it." And so to me, that means the world. And that's the reason I go to the office and to the distillery in the morning. But also, you were talking about the kids and that sense of mission. When Debbie and I finally convinced her to move to France. Bridget, it took 8 years. Like, she was like, "Do you mean I have to move to France?" And I said, "Debbie, there's no vineyards in Central Park. I cannot do this in New York. You're talented. You can do so many things. I don't know, and we can't grow anything is here." So she finally agreed. That took 8 years. And she said, "Alexander, I'm going to Paris, but I can't do cognac. I don't want to raise kids that speak the English of the kitchen. I want to raise kids that go to a school where English is a language." So that was Paris. And so I was in cognac working like crazy, developing the distillery, developing the spirits and so on. And Debbie and the kids would come on a weekend. I would make sure the barrels were really steady. So when they hopped in the barrels with their friends, they wouldn't get hurt. And it was kind of the playground for them until they reached 10 or 12. And then they thought staying in Paris, teenage, with their friends would be a little cooler. And then I started to go up on weekends. But that's how they grew up. And luckily, my grandparents lived, especially my grandmother, a long life. And she did instill in the kids that sand of the land. She taught my son how to catch a viper, a red viper, without being bit, which when I take him to distilleries, in Central America, that can help him. He can he can catch a snake without being bit. And that relationship with the land is always around the corner for us in whatever we do. And I love the fact that, Charles, maybe didn't tell you, but it was when he was young, he was cheap labor on a tractor. Once you're 14, you can be on a tractor. So, we don't use chemicals in the vineyards. So if you don't use chemicals, the grass is going to compete with the grapes, right? So you need either to plow, but you don't want to plow too much, or actually to cut the grass like you would cut your lawn, mow your lawn. So when you have a 14-year-old or 15-year-old kid, that's cheap labor, man. That's what you do. And they learn. You give them money, they're happy. Of course, we're doing it to just see, and Charles would do this. He would have the cheapest tractor. That was the oldest one, built in 1970. I remember, Debbie, it was a Maserati. So we say, don't complain. You're driving a Maserati, man. Don't complain. Nobody does at your age. It was an old tractor. Tiny little, Maserati used to make tractors in the old days. So that's how the kids grew up. And so there was not, to answer your question, there was no moment like, okay, man, I'm going to build a business. I'd like to tell you, how people connect the dots afterwards? To us, we're just doing something we love to do, with some nights that are sleepless nights, Bridget, when you don't know if you're going to make ends meet, when you build something. But we felt the duty to the people working with us. We still do. And I'm proud that, Guillaume, who is in the US, he was a young kid out of business school, and he went to the US on a budget. And it's been 26 years, 27 years we worked together. That's the family of Ferrand, and I could tell you about a lot of people like this, working with us. I think that's the core, more than, okay, this is a business model, is making spirits we think are delicious. And Bridget, some spirits that say something, like a good book. I could tell you every spirit we make, Plantaray, Ferrand, or Citadel, each bottle has a message. Like they stand for something. Sometimes people say, why don't you make a French whiskey? I say, I don't know what would be my message. But when we make the Plantaray, so making something super complex that feels accessible, that I know it's got a lot under the hood, but somebody can try it and say, oh, that's delicious. That to me is a great reward, for example. All these things is what carried us all these years, and still do.
Yeah, and it really does. I mean, the spirits that you're producing are elegant, and they're unique, and they're delicious, and they're timeless, right?
Well, thank you.
Yeah. With that said, I want to flip it back over to Debbie for just a moment. We talked a lot about Charles and being on his Maserati tractor and working the fields, and now he is in the industry, and you must be just so proud, right, to be able to pass down your knowledge of, I guess, Alexandre's knowledge, right, of the industry to him, and your knowledge of of hospitality and of business. Do your daughters have any interest at all in hospitality and in spirits?
Yes. Annabelle, our youngest, actually is going to be working with the team in New York and learning to see if this is something she wants to do. She's been doing film, and she's very interested in brand building and in commercials, and she's very interested to see what we do and give it a go. And I think that's quite interesting. Ariane, who does music, has worked to do a couple of jingles for us, because
she has.
Yeah,
can we give her a big shout out, because her music is so great. It is so cutting edge. Can you tell our listeners where they can find her on Instagram, please?
Yes, she's Ariane Gabriel on Instagram, and she actually did some jingles for us. She did the Vive le Cornichon, and she did Le Vie en Rose, about the Vie en Rouge, about Citadel Rouge, which is our gin that's just launching in the US, which is really nice. So it's been really fun, because I kept thinking, I don't know about you, but I can still remember every commercial from when I was a kid. And when there's a jingle in your head, you get that earworm. And she's a very talented writer. And so I said, well, why don't we see if she can do something for us? Because she's very good at, they call it top lining. She's very good at it. So I'm very proud of her. So all three of them really have contribute to, as Alexander said, this community, this family business. And it's going to be really interesting to see what Annabelle thinks. We have an incredible team in the US, all over. And so she's going to be working with someone who I think she's extremely talented. And it's always nice to have a mentor, someone that can kind of take you under the wing and teach you a business. Because as you know, when you start, and nowadays so many people work from behind their computers and they don't have that experience. And I think it's really fantastic to have that opportunity.
Yeah, we'll have to have her on Served Up. I'm just going to have your kids on Served Up and we'll get down to the nitty gritty.
Then you'll get all the bad stories.
I'm not sure about this.
Alexander says no.
Our kids' friends calls us the Gaffia.
Oh,
because they said that once you're part of the family, you're in.
So, oh my gosh!
They say we like being part of the Gaffia.
The Gaffia. Oh my gosh! Well, that might need. Gaffia. That might need to be the next, brand name that you come out with. I don't know. For Alexander, can you tell our listeners who are really curious about your brands, what does a day in the life look for you?
Oh, there's many different days, but typically the part I love the most is production. So when I can do this, I do market visits, I do master classes, and I do love to share. But my best moments is when I work on creating new spirits. I have a team. I think they're like my rock band, and I was the young rookie when I started in the rock band, and they were the older guys who taught me their ways. And the last one, Luc, retired. He was a mentor to me. And actually, I dedicated a small aging warehouse. His last name is Sache, to him. And there's a big plaque on it with his name. He's so proud and just retired. And so, so the part I love is that creation. So, I think when you create, I don't create by myself. I got a team. So when these guys retired, I was trained luckily by two master blenders. In Cognac, we're about 23 of us. So, usually one is training you. That's why I'm writing a book about this, because I think it should be written, just not, oral culture. And so creating these products, what I love. So typically wake up very early, no breakfast because you're going to be tasting, and you taste 80 barrels, for example. That's typically a barrel sample day to know what it is. You don't see it in my desk here, but there's hundreds and hundreds of little bottles of different kind. A friend of mine just sent me a quint spirits that I was trying as I was speaking with you, for example. And then creation, I'm going to be doing this tomorrow. So my day tomorrow at 8:00, I'm with Fanny and Alex, and we're, she's a PhD in chemistry, and she has a master in perfume making. So she's my new rock band. They're like the new musicians. The old guys are like the ZZ Tops, they're retired. And then now I got, new musicians, that I got to hire. And typically she'd be an example that totally fits in the band. I saw her thesis, she did a PhD in distilling, unfiltered wine distilling. And I really loved what she had to say and said, do you want to join in and be part of this band? And she said, well, I don't know. I heard about what you're doing and I'm very excited about it. But my dream is perfume making. And one day we created together a gin called Jardin d'été by Citadel Jordan. And I did this gin in honor of Debbie, because during COVID, my wife Debbie went crazy in a way that she started gardening like a mad woman. And I'm a guy from the country, but Debbie's more like a city person. So seeing Debbie planting everything like at the chateau here, like crazy, like cantaloupes, is very big in Cognac. We ate the thousands of tomatoes. They were all there. And I made it a gin that reminded me like summer, Southwest France, lemonade pool kind of gin. And I worked with it with Fanny. And when we launched it in Paris, to tell you how we work as a rum band, and she's a younger woman, and I said, you should be the one talking, and she's like, no, you're the master distiller. It's you. I said, no, you should go. This is, you've been working at this. And she's like, I don't know what to say. And she said, I always wanted to make my own perfume. Like when I was a young woman, a young teenager, I wanted to be the perfume. And working with you on Jardin d'été was the first perfume I'm making. And we can drink it. I said, why don't you tell everybody this? You don't have to make up stuff. You have to tell the truth, And so she went on and said that story. And that's my rock band, and I could tell you about the whole team. And luckily, I have the same high quality team in Barbados. I'm going back and forth, as you know. So I'm spending a week in Barbados every month. Debbie comes with me now that all the kids are raised. And so, and Debbie has really, really took the company in a way that now we're open to the public. Because, remember, you know us, Bridget, we're kind of kid, we're like, we're like kids on a mission, swapping, knowledge with other distillers like kids swap baseball cards or Pokemon cards. And Debbie one day says, why not opening to the public like normal people? Like stop talking about esters and congeners and volatile substances. Just, make us a good drink and tell us why it's so good and we're going to have fun. So, because of her, we opened a distillery here in Citadel Distillery in Cognac, Citadel Gin. I'm proud to tell you that we just were voted in London the number one visits in the world, as
wow,
the quality of the visit.
And that's
not a tribute to me. Yeah, that's to Debbie and the team. That was our idea. And the distillery, we make Plantaray in Barbados, is open also to the public. And that was also to just open your doors to people who are normal and want to enjoy like a great drinks and not just people super knowledgeable like you, Bridget, and stuff. And that was the big contribution of Debbie, in that sense, to just say that. But really my normal day is that I love the most is that. And tomorrow I'm spending the day with Fanny and we create 10 new spirits every month, not to sell them, just to practice. Like a musician practices new pieces all the time. And then one will make it out every year or when we have something super special. Like when we created the Curacao Yuzu, for example. Remember, I created the Curacao with Dave Wondrich by many years of research. What is a true Curacao, the Ferrand dry Curacao? And one day I'm making Jardin d'été, and the secret I'm going to tell you, I never told many people, we're using late harvest Yuzu in Citadel Jardin d'été, the Jordan. So it creates that lemonade feel super, super fresh. And instead of distilling the skin like everybody would, I distill the whole fruit. I slice it and distill the whole fruit. So it's like a distilled lemonade in a gin kind of thing, right? And super refreshing. But when you distill that gin, the distillery smells like paradise. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to substitute. It really does. When you go there, Bridget, you're like, if paradise has a smell, this is it, And so we decided I said, what about the Curacao, as you know, which is an orange liqueur? What about substituting for yuzu, late harvest, when the yuzu is like sweet, intense, super refreshing? And we made the Curacao Yuzu. So, there's no market study. There's just doing something we think is so unique. And doing usually every product, we like to do products that don't exist there already. If it's been done, why should we do it? There's some wonderful products out there. Why imitate? I always tell the team, we need to do something that is different and that moves the needle. That's for us.
Yeah. And I think I know the bartenders really appreciate it because it's just one more tool to put in their toolbox. Right?
You're right.
That's unique and fun, and they can create something beautiful with. And that's what you provide.
It's funny you say this,
hospitality
Bridget.
Workers.
Funny you say this because I always like to say that we built the instruments, for you to have pleasure and fun. And bartenders, I like to say, we're their toolkits, we built the violin and they play the music. And there's some incredible bartenders out there, and we love that partnership. But same thing when you're home, when you want to sip a beautiful cognac, a Ferrand cognac, or have a beautiful experience about what rum truly is, right? Rum with a capital S at the end, because there's so many expressions of rums that we're trying to celebrate with Plantaray. So that's the reason, yes, to wake up every morning.
Yeah. Well, I know that you are both incredibly busy. So Debbie, I'm going to flip this over to you. When you guys are not working or traveling, what do you both love to do together to unwind that has nothing to do with the hospitality industry?
We both love music. So I kind of learned how to play drums and I joined a band. And Alexander always says he's not a good pianist, but he really is. And so some nights he comes with us and he plays. He's so good. They make fun of him. They go, oh, he's so French. He says, I'm not very good. And then he gets on and he's just amazing. So that's really fun. We like to go hear concerts. We both love history, so we like to antique. We both love to go to an antique market. And we like movies. We still go to the movie theater. I think there's not many of us left, but it's kind of a nice night where you don't have to think about anything. But we really do love like music history and culture. So
Yeah. And,
It's
I
fun.
think it's super important to have those interests, right? That are outside of the day-to-day grind or outside of your profession or outside, especially a family business, because so much gets intertwined, right?
It's true. Yes, it is
Personal
true.
and professional for sure. So can you just talk to, especially for our listeners that are tuning in right now and really curious about that balance. And I'm not a big fan of the word balance. I do believe in kind of satisfaction or finding a little bit of grounding, but I don't know that I've ever found the work-life balance. But can you talk about the importance of that?
I think that's really true what you say, because I don't think that there's a balance. And it's kind of as you said before, we're in the hospitality business. So you don't turn it on and turn it off. There's no 9 to 5. And I don't know. I kind of feel like everything in life is a little bit about opportunity. When you meet people or see people, and it's just kind of natural how you go about it. I do try on the weekends, because we work a lot and we travel a lot. That's what I was saying. On the weekends, I try to go hear music, or we try to go and see a movie. We try to make sure that we're home as a family and eat together. That's always an important. We eat every meal usually as a family when we're together. We have a dinner time. People didn't eat, 3 different meals and go off. Everybody ate together. And that's something that I got from my family. And I'm sure Alexander got something like that from his family. And it was a natural thing that we did, but I realized that it's not so usual. And it's a real time to connect to your family. And I think as long as that you speak to each other, Alexander, our kids live in different places. We make sure that we talk to them every day. So we have a real line of communication. So to me, that's my grounding, is being able to talk to my kids, see our family, be at home, be together and eat. It's hard to explain something that people don't understand, because we what's normal to us is not normal to other people, and it's kind of the lifestyle that we're used to, but yet I think we've got our feet on the ground. I think that we have the right values, I mean, in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to me important, because even as we've grown, as Alexander said, I feel so privileged. We have amazing, amazing team. I mean, the people in Cognac, the people, that work for us all over the world, the people in Barbados and Jamaica. I mean, we're so lucky to have a team like that. And we're very linear. So everybody has a say. Everybody's creativity is recognized. And that's normal for us. And I realize when we go other places, that may not be so normal for others. So in that way, I don't know. I think we've been very blessed in that way.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think you're doing, both of you, you're doing it the right way. Like you've always put your family first. I don't know a time when I've spoken to the both of you, whether it's passing in the hallways at Tails or wherever it is, where you're not mentioning your kids or, I always see you two together most of the time. And so it's just been so much fun to watch Maison Ferrand evolve and see it's a true family team effort. And I think it's so crazy that Annabelle's going to be in New York in the business. I just remember her when she was so tiny, just so teeny tiny. I just have to share this story because I did have the pleasure of staying at your home. And I remember she came into the bedroom early one morning and she handed me a piece of paper and it was written in French. I couldn't read it. And I was like, I don't know what this says. And she was like petitioning to get a rabbit or something, another animal. And she's like, will you sign this petition? I'm like, no, I'm a house guest. I can't. Your mom and dad will kill me. You already have a dog. You don't need a rabbit. And I was trying to have this like come to Jesus conversation with her as a mom. What's that? Yes. And she was back, no, you have to sign it, please. I was just like about to cry. And I'm like, no. Honey, I can't. And I had like this mommy moment with her. Like, your parents are going to kick me out of your house if I do sign this. I think you're adorable, but no, ma'am.
That's funny.
It was a teacup pig. She wanted a tiny pig.
Yeah, I remember it was something, and she just
it was a teacup pig. So she tried to have a lot of people by petition,
yes,
to
we
have
had a petition. She wanted me to sign.
One time when Joaquin Simon and Ria Wong were staying with us, it was their honeymoon, and they were staying with us, and Annabelle would write them poems. She was a little girl in the morning, and I always remember that Joaquin then went back and created a a cocktail called the Little Miss Annabelle.
That's incredible. That should be on every menu. Every menu around the world, folks.
That was a cognac.
I'll be having a little Annabelle.
I always remember that.
Well, let me ask you both one last question. I don't want to take up too much of your time today. Alexander, let's start off with you. What do you hope people remember most about you and your work 50 years from now?
It's a good question. We also have our own masonry. We built our own buildings, and I'm going to make an analogy, Bridget, because I think spirits are architecture, and they're folk arts at the same time. And what I want people to remember, if they find, I collect spirits that have been made a long time ago. And sometimes you open a bottle and you're like, wow, this guy or these guys knew what they were doing. And I don't care if they remember it's me and it's my team. I think I want them to have that moment where they go like, wow. Because, I've been distilling and making spirits for 36 years and researching it every single day and night. And so to me, that's that moment that I have. And, the guys that built for us, we have a stone masons because, and they know how to do coopers, and they're very multitasking, very handy, like if we're on a farm, right? And when we built a new wall, there's this thing where I always tell them, even if you don't see that part, one day somebody's going to take that wall down or change it. I want them the same way to look at this and say, I don't know who did this, but they knew what they were doing. You tell them something, and to me, these time capsules are magical. And you know what probably influences me, Bridget, is that in Cognac, when you build a house, you always hide, for good luck, a bottle in the wall with a letter. And what I want, I guess, by making these delicious spirits, whether Plantaret, Citadel, or Ferrand, Cognac, I think we're doing this as little pleasure capsules, and somebody whoever's made it can say, wow, this creates emotion for me when you drink it or when you share it with friends. I think that's what it is, sharing this. So, I know when somebody's super, has got that talent and dedication. There's not one without the other. And so I don't get it. It has to be attached to us. But that moment of respect that you have for somebody from the past years, whoever that was, I think it's because once you've gone through that experience, you're a better person. Once you've discovered that bottle and that wall and it's delicious and there's a right little letter, and these guys are probably up there drinking the angel share in the sky. So to me, that's I would like to remember. And the second part is that sense of community. To me, it's so important. I grew up on a small village. Our team is a community, is our community. And, our son, when he went they studied in France, and when they moved, they wanted to study to experience America. So they went to university there. And, in America, you guys have that thing where you do a sabbatical after school. Mm-hmm. And he says to me, I call him, so what are you going to do? He says, I want to live in Alaska in my car for 6 months. And I'm like, well, what happened, Charles? Like, you're like, is it like a bad trip, or, is this a problem with you? And he's like, no, but Daddy, we always had 15 or 10 people at the table. I grew up with the whole team all the time. I want to know what is solitude. And it really made me think. And believe me, he came back to Los Angeles to see his sisters 6 months later. He had written a book, and he called me and he said, Daddy, I just want you to relax. I love civilization. So it's all good. But what I'm telling you this is that sense of community, that team of misfits on a mission to make delicious spirits is something that I think is very special with Maison Ferrand, really, and that's something I'm very proud of. And I'd like also people to remember, it's because I think with great spirits and great bars, we're not about war, we're not about hate, we're about love. And 100%. I sound corny probably when I say that, but I truly believe so. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people argue about, sometimes in a mean way, about a spirit or about and I'm like, you're not in the business if you're like that. If you're really in our business, it's about love. It's about sharing these moments. So that's all of this that I'd like people to remember, but it's more an emotional memory than like this intellectual thing where you're going to be, oh my God, yes, I do think I have a talent for doing this, but it's like this. I think I owe it to the people around us. But that sense of creating something extraordinary, if we are able to do this and they can go like, wow, and then they feel a better person because they tasted it, but also that sense of community living together and about the love of our industry is about love. It really is.
Yeah.
It might be sound corny, but it's something that I hope we made a mark as a company about this. It's not just the money. It's about the sharing. That's the values, at least, that I'd like to pass on.
And I believe that you're already starting to do that now. I think when people think of your brands, they think of community, they think of hospitality. It's a lot of warm, fuzzy thoughts for sure. For sure.
Well, thank you.
Means a lot to yeah. And it starts with the both of you. That's why I want to have the both of you on, because
it's the first time, Bridget, we do that together.
That just shocks the hell out of me.
Yeah, it's a first.
It's true.
True.
Debbie, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want, people to think when they think of you 50 years from now, besides that you have like the best style and you're a badass drummer?
You're crazy. I just want to keep building on our family. And I want them to, I don't know, I spent a lot of time working at Mademoiselle, which is one of the projects. And, I'm taking something that was a legacy of a family and bringing it back to life. And we're redoing it. And I'm just like, every time I work there, I hope that the woman that lived there is proud because she passed away and it was so important to her. And I always I have her in mind. And for me, as Alexandre, we're a family business, and I just really would love to see that it continues in the family, and then hopefully we have grandkids and they're able to enjoy it, and their journey continues something in it. But that's what I would like.
Yeah, I think that's a great vision to have and a great legacy to have as well. And with that said, I want to wish you both just some great health and a lot of peace. And thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. For being on Served Up. Oh my goodness. I'm so happy that you came on the show.
Thank you so
Bridget.
much, Bridget.
Thank you so much. Great to see you and see you very soon.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.